Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by asking you a question that is simple in its words, but profound in its implications. When was the last time you truly needed to see someone, not because of convenience, not because of formality, but because your very being insisted on it? Because deep inside, there is something unresolved, something unspoken, something that no text message, no email, no virtual call could possibly capture. You already know the reason why this urgency exists, don't you? It is the pull of human connection at its most raw, its most primal, yet somehow elevated by the sophistication of our modern consciousness. Our brains, fascinatingly complex organs with roughly 86 billion neurons forming trillions of synaptic connections, are wired to recognize nuances that words cannot convey. A subtle twitch of a smile, a fleeting shadow in the eye, the infinitesimal micro-expressions we almost fail to notice, these are the signals that carry truths. Sometimes truths we cannot articulate ourselves. And in that moment, when you realize you must face someone, it is not just curiosity. It is your brain screaming for completion, for closure, for understanding that transcends language. I remember a personal encounter early in my career when I was working on a project that involved advanced neural simulations. There was a colleague, someone I respected immensely, who had made a decision that seemed irrational, counterintuitive to the evidence we had painstakingly collected. Emails were exchanged, messages sent, arguments presented with logic so precise it would have satisfied any rigorous peer review, yet nothing changed. The situation lingered unresolved, and I found myself compelled to meet them face to face. In that room, standing mere feet away, I noticed the subtle signs my rational mind could not have predicted: the hesitation before speaking, the flicker of doubt in their eyes, the alignment of posture that betrayed a struggle between pride and acknowledgement. And in that room, without a single slide deck, without a single data chart, we reached an understanding that no digital medium could ever have achieved. That encounter taught me something vital: human connection operates on layers that science is only beginning to understand. Face-to-face interactions engage the mirror neuron system in ways that virtual interaction simply cannot. Our brains are hardwired to resonate with others through proximity, through the unspoken synchronization of neural activity that forms empathy. When we stand in front of each other, our prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, and our limbic system, the seat of emotion, engage in a dance that no technology, however sophisticated, can fully replicate. And it is in that dance, that subtle choreography, that truths emerge. Think about the essence of why you feel this pull, why you cannot ignore it. The human brain, despite all its complexity, operates on patterns. We detect patterns in speech, patterns in behavior, patterns in emotion. But there are patterns that cannot be transmitted digitally. A message lacks tone in its fullness. A screen flattens the curvature of human subtlety. And so, your subconscious mind compels action. Action that is urgent and undeniable. This is why in moments of conflict, in moments of critical decision-making, in moments where stakes touch the deepest parts of our lives, the brain overrides convenience and commands presence. The biological imperatives, honed over millennia, are telling you something essential: resolution, understanding, empathy, and trust are processes that demand full sensory engagement. The smell of a person's presence, the timbre of their voice vibrating through the air, the micro-adjustments of their body in real time, all of these are not luxuries, they are data points, crucial for the optimal function of human cognition and emotional intelligence. I want to explore that further, because it connects directly to our relationships, our collaborations, and the very way we navigate reality. Consider how leaders in history approached pivotal moments. Winston Churchill, during the darkest hours of World War II, insisted on face-to-face discussions with generals and advisors. Not because he doubted the intelligence or skill of his aides, but because he understood, instinctively, that there are dimensions of understanding that are only accessible in physical presence. The alignment of vision, the transmission of unspoken urgency, the reinforcement of trust, these could not be encoded into telegrams or memos. Similarly, in medicine, in clinical neuroscience, studies show that patients exhibit measurable improvements when consulted in person versus remotely. Their neural responses, their stress levels, even their adherence to treatments, are all influenced by the proximity and authentic presence of another human being. There is a signal, invisible but undeniable, that flows between people in shared space, and ignoring it comes at a cognitive and emotional cost. So when you feel compelled to meet someone, it is not irrational. It is your biology, your psychology, your entire human architecture recognizing that the stakes are higher than any superficial convenience. This compulsion to be present is not just about resolving disputes or clarifying intentions. It is about truth. Truth is not merely the accurate reporting of facts, it is the lived experience of perception and understanding. And perception is fundamentally embodied. You cannot fully grasp another person's perspective through pixels and text. Neuroscience confirms this empathy. The neurological mechanism that allows us to understand and feel another's emotions activates far more robustly in physical interactions. Mirror neurons, discovered in the late 20th century, light up when we witness actions and emotions in others, forming the neural substrate for imitation and emotional resonance. These neurons respond differently in person than through mediated digital channels. When you see someone face to face, your brain is literally firing in response to the nuances of their being, integrating a multidimensional spectrum of data that no remote interface can provide. It is as if your neural circuits are recognizing the authenticity of existence itself, and that recognition compels you to act. I once observed a patient, a young man struggling with social anxiety, who refused nearly all face-to-face interaction. Telemedicine, virtual consultations, digital check-ins, they were convenient. They were functional, yet his progress plateaued. It was only after a carefully structured, in-person session that he exhibited the breakthrough his mind had resisted for years. He experienced in a tangible, neurological sense the validation, the connection, and the mirrored emotional feedback that catalyzed change. The science is clear. Proximity and presence accelerate understanding, amplify trust, and strengthen cognitive processing in ways that our digital age, for all its brilliance, cannot replicate. And this is precisely why you feel the unshakable urge to meet someone, because your mind, body, and soul recognize the irreplaceable value of real, human, embodied interaction. Now let us consider the emotional dimension, which is inseparable from the scientific. Human emotions are not merely internal sensations, they are communicative phenomena. Happiness, grief, urgency, remorse, elation, they are signals meant to propagate through shared experience. When a crucial message is encoded only in text, the emotional fidelity is diminished. It is flattened, diluted, subject to misinterpretation. But face-to-face, emotions are transmitted in full spectrum, from the contraction of microfacial muscles to the cadence of breath, from the subtle shifts in posture to the temperature of a handshake. In moments where outcomes matter, where relationships, decisions, or even survival hang in balance, your brain, with evolutionary wisdom, recognizes that only by being present can the signals reach sufficient clarity and fidelity. You already know the reason you must go see this person. It is not just desire, it is necessity. And necessity in human cognition is encoded as both an emotional and a neurological imperative. When we push deeper into the nature of this need, we realize it is not confined to personal relationships. It extends to every interaction where stakes touch the essence of who we are. Consider the world of innovation, where ideas are fragile and fragile ideas need nurturing through dialogue. An email cannot capture the tremor of excitement in your voice when you have a breakthrough, nor the subtle hesitation that signals uncertainty. Sitting across from someone, you notice the flicker of curiosity in their eyes, the posture that signals receptivity or doubt, the way the mind races even before words are spoken. This is why the most transformative moments in science, business, and art happen in rooms, not in inboxes. The cognitive alchemy of presence, the interplay of intention, attention, and perception cannot be digitized. And yet, our culture increasingly tries to replace these interactions with convenience, with efficiency, with low-bandwidth communication that our neural architecture simply cannot fully process. The tension you feel, the urgency that compels you to act, is your nervous system signaling that the resolution you seek demands high-fidelity, multidimensional engagement. This is your body, your mind, and your emotions converging on one undeniable fact: you cannot outsource presence. I remember a colleague in neuroscience who was on the verge of a major breakthrough. She had been working remotely with teams across 3 continents. Months of careful data collection, meticulous experiments, countless emails and video conferences. Yet, the insights remained fragmented, pieces of a puzzle that refused to assemble. It was only when she convened a small, intensive, in-person session that patterns emerged, unexpected correlations, intuitive leaps that had eluded her while communicating through screens. Our cognitive processes, the very mechanisms that allow us to make connections, to reason, to innovate, are profoundly social. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with motivation and reward, spikes when we experience successful collaborative problem solving. Oxytocin, which fosters trust and bonding, is released more robustly in genuine, proximate interaction. This is not theory. This is measurable neurobiology, and it is why the compulsion you feel, the sense that you must see someone face to face, is fundamentally aligned with the principles of optimal human function. Your brain is not merely urging you toward social nicety, it is signaling a neurochemical necessity, a pathway toward clarity, understanding, and insight. Let us explore, too, the psychological dimension. There is a unique phenomenon called cognitive closure, the mental discomfort we experience when information is incomplete or ambiguous. The human mind craves resolution, craves certainty, and craves understanding. Unresolved interactions create a state of heightened neural activity, particularly in the anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors conflict and error. When you cannot meet someone in person, when a critical conversation is postponed or mediated through indirect channels, the brain remains in a state of tension, a low-grade stress that erodes decision-making, impairs memory, and inhibits emotional regulation. Face-to-face interaction allows the nervous system to calibrate, to align perception with reality, to integrate emotional and factual information simultaneously. This alignment, this recalibration, is the key to resolution. It is why you feel an almost irresistible pull. You already know the reason. Your brain and heart are insisting that the interaction occur, not later, not in abstraction, but now, in embodied reality. Human history offers countless illustrations. Think of the great negotiations, the turning points that shaped nations. They rarely occurred via letters or dispatches alone. They happened in rooms where proximity forced attention, where gestures spoke volumes, where micro-expressions communicated urgency and intent that no formal language could contain. The resolution of conflict, the spark of innovation, the formation of trust, these are all processes fundamentally contingent on human presence. Even in the digital age, leaders who understand this principle achieve extraordinary outcomes. They recognize that data alone is inert without the human context that imbues it with meaning. Presence activates perception. Perception informs cognition. Cognition guides action. It is an elegant, unavoidable chain reaction. And in that chain, every element, every nuance of tone, every imperceptible shift in posture, every micro-expression is data that the human mind must process in real time. The demand you feel to see someone is not simply emotional, it is an act of cognitive optimization, a request from your own nervous system for high-resolution input. The emotional stakes cannot be overstated. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We construct narratives, and our brains continuously update these narratives in response to new information. When information is incomplete, when cues are missing, the brain generates assumptions, fills gaps, and often creates distortions. This is why face-to-face encounters are transformative. They reduce noise, correct assumptions, and align perception with reality. The emotional resonance of presence, how a smile reassures, how hesitation signals doubt, how eye contact conveys trust, feeds directly into our interpretive machinery. This is why in therapy, mentorship, education, and leadership, the presence of one human being to another is irreplaceable. When you insist on seeing someone, it is not simply about asserting a desire, it is about correcting the neural and emotional models that guide your interactions and decisions. It is about truth, not convenience. It is about integrity, not efficiency. I want to share another story, one that exemplifies this principle in a deeply human context. A friend, an entrepreneur navigating the treacherous waters of a high-stakes startup, faced a critical betrayal from a partner. Emails were exchanged, arguments mounted, and yet no resolution emerged. Every virtual conversation felt like a shadow of the real truth. The tension built unspoken fears and assumptions metastasized, and the stress manifested in sleep disruption and cognitive fog. Only when the two of them agreed to meet, to sit across from one another, and confront the reality directly, did the situation begin to transform. In that room, they witnessed the micro-expressions, the subtle cues, the honesty embedded in body language. The conversation was not easy, but it was real, and it was complete. That encounter dissolved ambiguity, restored alignment, and allowed decisions to be made that no digital medium could have supported. The biological, psychological, and emotional mechanisms were all engaged simultaneously. The lesson is profound. Face-to-face interaction is not merely a social preference. It is a human necessity deeply rooted in our neural architecture, a necessity that transcends convenience and demands action. Now, let us examine the existential dimension of this compulsion, the reason why it is so urgent that you meet someone face to face. Human beings are temporal creatures. Our awareness of mortality, our understanding that time is finite, colors every decision, every interaction. When you feel that pull, the insistence that this meeting cannot be postponed, it is as though your consciousness is reminding you that some truths cannot wait, that some resolutions cannot be deferred, that some connections cannot be mediated by distance. Evolutionarily, this makes sense. In small ancestral communities, ambiguity in social bonds could mean exclusion, loss of resources, or threat to survival. Our neural circuitry has been honed over millennia to detect uncertainty and incompleteness, particularly in social contexts. And today, while the stakes may be less about immediate survival, they are no less critical. Relationships, trust, understanding, collaboration, and emotional integrity are essential to the thriving human experience. When your body and mind insist that you see someone, it is acknowledging that these stakes are real. That delay or distance comes at a cost to your cognitive, emotional, and even physical well-being. Consider, too, the science of memory and encoding. Experiences that involve full sensory engagement, sight, sound, touch, even smell, are encoded more robustly in our hippocampus, the brain's central memory hub. Face-to-face interactions are multi-sensory experiences. They create dense, interconnected neural maps that digital interactions simply cannot replicate. A phone call or video chat might convey information, but it lacks the rich, embodied context that allows us to truly understand, empathize, and internalize. In moments of consequence, whether in personal relationships, professional negotiations, or scientific collaboration, this difference is the difference between superficial comprehension and profound understanding. It is why every great conversation, every pivotal reconciliation, every moment of insight that shifts trajectories has historically occurred in shared presence. The human mind, in its complexity, recognizes the value of proximity and commands action accordingly. You already know the reason why. This brings us to a deeper truth. Authenticity is inseparable from presence. When we are physically together, we cannot hide as easily behind screens, behind curated messages, behind fragmented impressions. Presence exposes us to the scrutiny of another human mind in real time. And this exposure is transformative. It forces honesty, demands accountability, and catalyzes emotional clarity. Neuroscience shows that being observed in real time by another human being modulates activity in the prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment, decision-making, and social cognition. In essence, presence elevates performance, refines perception, and deepens understanding. When you feel compelled to meet someone, you are responding to this subtle but powerful mechanism. Your brain and your emotions are seeking the highest fidelity channel for truth. This is why urgency arises not as a matter of preference, but as a biological and psychological imperative. Your body and mind know that what is at stake cannot be transmitted digitally. It can only be experienced together. Let me give you one final illustration, drawn from the frontier of neuroscience and human behavior. Studies of dyadic synchrony, the phenomenon where two individuals' physiological and neural patterns align during interaction, show that people achieve higher levels of cooperation, trust, and insight when engaged in direct, in-person communication. Heart rates synchronize, subtle facial expressions are mirrored, microgestures are intuitively interpreted, and cognitive performance improves. These findings are not abstract, they explain why, in boardrooms, laboratories, and living rooms alike, presence matters. It is not merely social ritual, it is an emergent property of our neural design. When you experience the urgent need to see someone face to face, it is your biology, your cognition, and your emotional architecture converging to signal nothing less than this will suffice. So, as you approach that moment, as you step into the room, I urge you to embrace it fully. Recognize that your need is grounded in profound scientific, psychological, and evolutionary principles. Recognize that the urgency you feel is not weakness, not impatience, not irrationality. It is a manifestation of your human design, a call from your brain, heart, and nervous system to engage at the highest level of clarity and integrity. Approach the encounter with honesty, with presence, with curiosity, and with empathy. Observe carefully, listen intently, and allow the full spectrum of human communication to guide you. In doing so, you will not only reach understanding, you will also honor the biology, the cognition, and the humanity that compels you. And when the conversation concludes, when eyes meet and hands are shaken, when unspoken truths are acknowledged, you will recognize that presence itself was the instrument of resolution, insight, and transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world that increasingly prizes speed, efficiency, and digital convenience. And yet, in the midst of this acceleration, the deepest truths of human existence remain unchanged. The neural architecture that governs perception, emotion, and cognition demands authentic, embodied connection. Trust is built in proximity. Insight is catalyzed in presence. Understanding is crystallized face to face. So the next time your mind and heart insist that you meet someone, that you sit across the table, that you face the reality together, listen. Do not postpone. Do not compromise. Do not underestimate the power of your own human wiring. Step into the room. Observe, feel, engage. The resolution you seek, the understanding you need, and the transformation you can create all await you there. And in that act, you will touch the profound essence of what it means to be human, to witness, to be seen, and to connect.